Like and subscribe for endless entertainment.
Our story starts off with our MC Maple talking with her friend about playing a new game. Her friend tells her to start without her because she has to go study. Maple puts on the console and enters the game. In the game, they ask her to pick her class. She decides she wants to be in a class that takes little damage and chooses the tank. She gets stat points to put into her character and she puts all of them into vitality to raise her defense. She enters the world and finds herself moving slowly because she has 0 points in speed. She wants to slay some monsters to level up, then gets pointed to a forest. In the forest, she calls for the monsters to come out. A monster appears and attacks her viciously, but it does no damage. After an hour of letting the monster tackle her, she gains a skill that doubles her defense. The monster goes to attack her again and she mercilessly slaughters it with her shield. She levels up and puts her stat points into defense again. While walking, she is attacked by a bee that stings her, but she says it tickles. She gets poisoned and her health begins to decrease, but she realizes that the more poison she is hit with, the more her resistance is raised. She pretends to be hurt and the monster busts all over her, raising her poison resistance to moderate. The monster charges at her and she slays it without remorse. She gains a new item which doubles her defense. She falls asleep while the other monsters gangbangs her. She wakes up with a new healing skill and realizes she is being attacked. She scares them off and acquires a taunt skill. She puts all the points in defense and decides to log off to sleep. The next day, she sees a defense class walking and asks where he got his shield. He introduces her to a crafter, and Maple tells her she needs defensive armor so she won't take any damage. She says to Maple that she needs a lot of money to make it and shows her a dungeon she can head towards to get some loot. The other defense class gives her some potions and sends her on her journey. In the dungeon, she finds slimes and slashes them, but it has no effect, so she decides to crush them under her massive shield until they cease to exist. She wanders the dungeon, encountering many creatures that she overcomes until she enters the boss area. Inside she finds a hydra. It breathes poison at her that destroys her equipment. It continues to breathe poison at her, but each time she is about to respawn she spams potions to refill her health until she gained poison immunity. She laughs at the monster, but then realizes it has teeth. She realizes that she has teeth too and begins eating the hydra. The psychotic woman devours the monster until it gives up on life. She levels up and gains a skill that allows her to use the skills of the hydra. She sees a chest and opens it. Inside there is conveniently a great shield and a suit of armor that grows stronger each time they are broken. The next day she taunts the enemies, then beat them to not living with her shield. She sees bugs peacefully flying in the sky and paralyzes them. She picks one up and eats it. She says it is delicious and gains a devour skill which she puts into her shield skill slot. Maple walks to school when her friend, Sally, appears and tells Maple about an event that will be taking place soon. Maple goes to the event and is teleported to a broken castle. She decides that her skills can't hunt people and sits to draw a dragon. Her first victim appears and charges at her but gets eaten by her shield. 3 more sacrifices appear and Maple paralyzes them so they can't fight back while she mercilessly feeds them to her shield. Many more players try defeating her but are eaten. She is hit with a mace, but it does nothing. They realize that she is a raid boss and decide to team her, but she summons an actual boss and unlives them all. She finds out she is in 3rd place, so people gain extra points for defeating her. The players surround her, but she releases a poison fog. They try to run away, but she paralyzes their bodies, condemning them to a slow and painful unaliving. She tells Sally what happened, surprising her with how broken she is. Sally decides that she will play as an assassin with a lot of evasive skills so neither of them will take damage. They enter the game and go to an inn. Sally divides her stats into agility and hopes to get a strong item like Maple's equipment. Sally points out that Maple will not get skills unless she is hit by attacks. Maple realizes this and goes to the crafter to create a weaker shield. The crafter tells her to collect materials from a cave. In the cave, they go fishing and collect the material. Sally decides to go for a swim and comes back to bring all the materials Maple needs. She tells Maple she found a dungeon in the water, but she wants to do some grinding before she takes it on. After she is done training, Sally decides she is ready since she maxed out her swimming skill. Sally swims down to the dungeon and encounters a fish monster. It chases her, but she dodges. She tries to stab it, but its scales are too tough. The monster hides in a fog and shoots a hyper beam. Sally dodges them while swimming toward the monster and uses 3 wind spells and decapitates the fish. A chest appears and she gets an assassin item set. After logging out, they find out that the devs patched the game so Maple can only use Devour 10 times a day and implement armor piercing so she can take damage. In the game, Maple decides to head to level 2, but Sally wants to explore first. They go around sightseeing and Maple buys a spell called Cover. Maple and Sally decide to have food. The rank 2 player comes and introduces themselves. Sally is told about a quest to get a speed skill and goes to the location. On the quest, they find ghosts who scare the hell out of Sally, but Maple is unfazed. They enter a room and find a man screaming in pain. Maple tries to help him, but the potions have little effect. Sally decides to go heal him. After relieving his pain, he heads to a better place. She finds the speed skill, then heads to an area where the sun always set. On the sand, they find an item on the beach and decide to keep it. They head to the dungeon that leads to the second level. Pigs charges at Maple and gets one shot. A bear appears, then Sally turns Maple's shield invisible. The bear attacks Maple and is devoured like everything else that touches the OP shield. They head into the boss room and find a deer monster. It attacks them, but Maple uses Hydra. The monster blocks it with a shield, then Maple taunts the monster while Sally goes to find its weakness. Sally tells her to attack the apples and she uses Hydra and breaks the shield. The Hydra bites the monster, but it uses Explode, knocking them away and fainting the Maple. Sally 1v1 the dungeon boss, taking one of its eyes then taking off its head. She does a cool pose while the monster falls behind her and laughs at Maple. They arrive at level 2 and found the crafter. She tells Maple the shield is ready. She collects it and names it Snow White. They get ready for the next event. They are told that it's a treasure hunt where they can search for medals or take medals from players in a PvP match, and the top 10 players from the last event start off with a gold medal. They are transported to a random location and decide that they will get 20 golds for this challenge. Maple drops through a hole and takes 0 damage. Inside they find a boss door. A clown monster comes out of the shadow and attacks them, but Maple blocks it. The assassin, who focuses most of her points on speedruns while the tank with 0 agility spams teleports and keeps up with her. Maple gets hit to the floor, but she's fine. Sally uses her speed skill to distract the monster while the tank uses Hydra and one-shots it. Sally asks what skill she used to keep up with her and Maple says it's a skill that allows her to teleport. A treasure chest appears and they find 2 medals inside. They head off the hole, then go up to a snowy mountain. On the mountain, they find the other tank's party. The parties discuss who should enter the dungeon. Maple begs Sally to let them go since they already got medals. Sally agrees and the tank's team thanks them, then enters the dungeon. The dungeon suddenly opens back up, and confused about what happened to the tank's party, they head inside. Inside the dungeon, they find an Articuno. It uses Blizzard, but Maple block it with her body since she didn't want to waste her Devour skill. It shoots an icicle, forcing her to use the shield. Sally speeds at the monster, almost getting caught in its skill, but Maple teleports and defends her. Sally jumps at the monster as it attacks her, but the assassin switches places with the tank so she can do damage. Hydra had no effect on the monster and it uses Blizzard again, but it does damage to Maple because of its armor piercing. Sally runs at the monster, dodging its attacks. She hits it with a fireball while Maple tanks its damage, then hits it with her shield. Sally takes the chance to jump on its back and use a water skill. Maple, seeing this, uses Hydra to create a combination attack. The monster begins to charge a hyper beam that Maple blocks with much effort. She tells Sally that she only has 1 Devour left. The monster uses Amaterasu on itself and charges at Maple. It rams into her shield, causing it to break and throwing her into a wall. The armor reforges stronger and it charges into her again. This time the monster is knocked down from the recoil. Sally sends a mirage at the monster, distracting it. Then grab Maple the tank to finish it off. Sally asks how she survived the monster attack, and she explains that mid-battle she gained a skill that makes it so instead of dying she is reduced to 1 HP. Realizing that she nearly respawns, Sally spam heals Maple. They find 2 eggs in the dungeon. Maple decides to take the green one and Sally grabs the white one. They exit the dungeon and try to hatch the eggs by wrapping their bodies around it. The eggs hatches, revealing that the green one was a turtle and the white was a fox. Maple named her Turtle Syrup and Sally named hers Obero. They fight monsters with their Pokemon and defeat them to level them up. While walking, they are confronted by a player that challenges Maple to a PvP for her gold medal. Realizing she is outnumbered, she runs away, but Sally chases after her. She slashes at Sally, but it was a mirage. Sally reverse Uno cards her. Maple catches up to the super-fast assassins and interrupts their duel, causing a sandpit to swallow them. Inside the pit, they find themselves chained to each other and linking their HP. Seeing that they can't fight, they decide to work together. Maple trips and finds a silver medal in the ground that she keeps. While walking, a giant slug creature suddenly appears, but they can't end it since it has no HP bar.
The creatures begin surrounding them and the two assassins use their speed to escape, dragging Maple behind. They are surrounded and Sally tries to leap for the exit, but she falls short. The other assassin then uses a skill and boosts them to the top.
They find a chest containing items that they divide among each other. They find 2 medals and Sally decided to give one to the assassin. The assassin apologizes and they tell her it's okay and add her as a friend. They part ways with the assassins and Maple decides to keep exploring for more medals. They explore many places and find many medals in many different places. Sally comes out of the water and finds Maple playing games with a red hair boy. Sally is cautious about him, but he says that he is only level 5, so he isn't really trying to win the event. He gives them a book with a riddle to a quest and points them to Ruin. At the ruin, they use their abilities on an altar. They are teleported to an underwater ruin. A boss appears to attack them. It hits Maple's shield and gets devoured, but its HP doesn't go down because it regenerates. Maple spams her Hydra skill, ruthlessly slaughtering all the marine life in order to slay the boss. They are then sent to a place where they find more medals. They sit on the beach deciding that they need to PvP in order to get to their goal of 20 medals. Sally runs off to slaughter noobs. She attacks 2 players, but they fight back. She sends one to an early afterlife. The other one tries to attack her, but she has ultra instincts. She then decides to finish him off. She wonders about the battlefield, mercilessly taking the lives of all unfortunate enough to travel in her path. Sally comes back and tells her that they have enough medals. The other assassin appears and they decide to wait out the event since they have accomplished their goals. The events come to an end and they distribute their coins for skills. Maple makes Syrup giant and sits on its back. She uses another skill to make it fly. With her newfound mobility, she makes poison rain on the peaceful animals trying to survive this cruel world. Sally decides that they need to buy a guild house and goes shopping to buy one. They look at many homes but didn't find any that they want and can afford. While walking, they find a house and head inside. They love it and buy it for themselves. They decide to recruit the friends they have made to the guild and they all accept. The guild decides to make Maple the master and she decides their name will be Maple Tree. Maple's party flies upon the great god King Syrup to a dungeon while Sally's party destroys the beautiful wildlife for resources. They are told that a new event is incoming and they decide to recruit more members. Maple sees 2 girls talking and decide to invite them to the guild. They tell her they're noobs, but Maple doesn't care. They head towards a cafe to discuss it. The twins tell them they put all their points into strength, but now they move slowly. Sally tells them Maple did the same to her defense and they decide to join the guild. They take the Great Syrup to the level 1 boss and challenge it. Sally uses a shadow clone and attacks the monster. She and the fox does a combo, burning it. The monster uses a skill, but Maple blocks it. Sally gangbangs the monster and defeats it. Maple introduces the twins to the guild and they bow, destroying the table by accident. Maple and the twins travel to a dungeon in order to teach them how to defeat the bosses. They go to the Hydra again in order to ruin its day and Maple devours it with her shield. They travel to the dungeon over and over again, defeating the Hydra, putting it in an endless hell. They head back to the guild and announces that the twins have reached level 20. They explain that they now have a skill that doubles their attacks and enables them to hold 2-handed weapons in one hand. The crafter gives them crystal hammers and they thank her for them. The tank says he's going to go level up and Maple lends him the Great Syrup to level up as well. He enters a dungeon and defeats the boss. Syrup gains a new ability and the tank gets a new set of armor. Maple wanders the street and encounters a side quest. She guides the NPC on a trip to get medicine on the back of the Great Syrup. She gets the medicine and heads back. She gives it to her daughter, but she is still sick. A new quest comes up and she asks for a ring that can heal the body. Maple already had the ring and gives it to her. The NPC's daughter goes mad and runs away. They chase her towards a dungeon filled with ghosts. Maple summons Hydra, but they dodge. The ghost suddenly disappears because the medicine she got was holy water and cured her. A new quest arrives that sends Maple to a church for a potion. She brings it back and opens it when an angel appears and fully heals the NPC's daughter. Maple gains a new skill from the quest. She asks the crafter for new gear and then calls her guilds together to show it off. She uses her new skill, Loving Sacrifice. She grows wings and bleaches her hair. A circle surrounds all of her party that protects them. She reveals that every party member inside the circle has the same defense stat as Maple. The party discusses how broken this ability is, making them immortal. The guild goes around slaughtering cows and collecting their bells for the event. While collecting bells, Maple slips and falls down a mountain. She finds a coin, then wanders into a church. Inside, a knight in cool armor says he wants to eat Maple. He attacks her but does 0 damage. Chains appear and bondages her. She uses a skill that creates a white fluff shield to protect herself. She calls out the Great Syrup. He uses vines and restrains the monster, then uses a solar beam, blowing off the armor of the knight. It grows more hands, then launches a fire attack. Maple finds herself in the stomach of the monster, who instantly regrets his decision as Maple eats him from the inside until he became past tense. She gains his skills and decides to equip them with her armor set. At the guild house, Maple apologizes for not being at the event, but they say it's okay since she got a new skill. They decide to head to level 3 and go to fight the boss. Maple steps to the monster and summons a slug. It shakes off the monster's attacks, then begins whipping it to unalive. She then surrounds herself in a shield that grows in size. A monster comes out and sends the boss to tree heaven. They enter level 3 and see a world made of machines. They decided to split up in order to explore the city. Maple meets an old man that is sick and begging for food. She gives him food and activates a quest, tells her to head towards a location and find the first generation of machines. Maple flies on the Great Syrup and heads there. Inside the room, she finds a machine. The coin she picked up gets force pulled and activates it. It attacks her, knocking her back. Syrup restrains it and she gives him fisting he will never forget. He shoots a gear into her and gives Maple a new skill called Machine God. The monster transforms and fires at her. Maple activates the skill and gains a mech suit. They have a beam struggle and the monster built for destruction loses to the tank. Maple calls her guild and shows them an arm of the mech. She fires at a rock, destroying it, while her guildmates thank God she is not an enemy. The guild event is announced and it captures the flag with orbs. In the event, Sally decides to go out and get more orbs. She attacks guilds and mercilessly destroys all who have the misfortune to meet her. She begins to get tired and takes a rest when she is ambushed by soldiers. She runs away with them close behind. Sally gets surrounded in the forest by the Mages Guild. They charge at her, but she blocks and dodges all their attacks. She runs through the fodder until the mage shoots a fireball. She uses a shadow clone and dodges. More soldiers appear and she falls to her knees. The mage raises her allies' defense and they prepare to attack her, when demon god Maple arrives in the form of an angel. Maple blocks all her attacks, then goes into her mech form and wipes them out with no regard for the lives she is taking. Maple and Sally arrive at their hideout, seeing an assassin attempting to take their orb. Maple binds him, then lets her pets eat him alive while he cannot fight back. The guild decides they are ready to win and releases Maple into the wild to punish the other guild for existing in her world. She flies on the Great Syrup, bringing destruction everywhere they go. The Fire Guild discusses the monster and prays they don't meet Maple themselves. One of the men runs, saying he sees a turtle approaching. They set off explosives traps, but Maple walks through them. They try to bind the unholy creature, but the twins free her. They try to poison and fireballs, but they all are ineffective in the face of the raid boss. They come face to face with the monster and she uses Hydro on them, but the priestess cures her team. The man tries to trap her, but they escape. Seeing her guild being slaughtered, the master comes in to protect them. She shoots a fireball at Maple, but it has no effect. The twins attacks, but she counters with a fire attack. Maple tries to shield them, but she gets knocked back. Maple stands in front of the twins and but them on the Great Syrup to escape. Maple sends out more demon spawn, but the master burns them. They unleash all their best attacks on her, but it all gets blocked. Syrup uses a blast, but the master deflects it. Maple unleashes Hydra, dispatching the fodders. The master says she has a way to destroy the demon and her guild attacks Maple. She is trapped in vines and ice and assaulted by wind magic. The master casts her skill, trapping Maple in a cage of fire that slowly drains her health. Maple assumes her mech form. The master tries to fight back, but Maple is too broken. She slaughters all her guildmates before her eyes and attempt to send her to join them. The guild master accepts defeat and tries to run away, but Maple won't let her prey escape and fires a laser that no one could survive. The master lands with the demon in front of her. She jumps on Maple and decides she is going to self-destruct. She explodes, but her passing was meaningless as Maple took no damage. Maple goes to take her victim's orb, but they were wise and ran off with it while she was fighting. The guild meets up and realizes that they are in 10th place and decide. The rank 1 player confronts Maple's guild with a team of 4. He challenges Maple to a fight and attacks her. Sally gets in between but is easily knocked away. He attacks Maple's shield constantly and uses an attack that surprisingly damages her. All his team buffs him with skills and he blitz Maple and gives her a lethal blow that drops her health to 1 HP. She uses Hydra but they are slain. Maple tries teleporting away to the crafter but he slays her before she could. He slashes at her multiple times, slowly breaking her defenses. The boy uses a smokescreen but gets slayed by Faker. Maple uses all her attacks but they are blocked, proving that Karma is indeed a bitch. The rank 1 charges an attack then dashes at Maple. She reveals a cannon arm and blasts him with the broken laser. He remains standing on 1 HP and start to charge another attack. Maple assumes her true form as a heartless demon. He tries to fight back but gets grabbed and becomes her dinner as she rips him apart slowly and enjoys his suffering. She goes on to slaughter the rest of his party as violently and compassionless as possible. The guild sits and plans their next move. Maple goes around destroying other guilds along with her teammates. Sally tells them not to make anyone escape and don't take prisoners. Maple arrives on a battlefield looking at her previous victim. She lasers the battlefield, wiping out her enemies for her. All the smart guilds starts wiping out the fodders. They clone Maple and releases them on the world to dominate it. Everyone watches as the monster creates a wasteland everywhere she goes. Maple logs out and says their guild came in 3rd place. She thanks Sally for showing her the game and Sally reminds her to study. At the guild, they have a celebration for their win with all the big guilds in attendance. They have a toast to their success and drink.
In the night, Sally tells Maple that the game has updated and level 4 is now released. The entire guild arrives to fight the new boss, but Maple's murderous intent takes over, and with some support from her teammates she begins mercilessly tearing the poor bastard apart until it decides that hell would be more compassionate than this demon before it. The guild goes up to the 4th floor, and seeing that it's larger than they thought, our party decides to split up to better explore the new level while gathering as much information as possible. Sally decides to hunt down monsters when she's suddenly attacked from the shadows. Her rival comes out to challenge her to another duel, and of course our assassin wants all the smoke. The fight begins with the mage keeping Sally away with her barrier skill, then casts a barrage of fireballs that she barely manages to dodge, before unleashing the sun to take her out. The mage begins to celebrate, but Sally crashes the party and sends her to the Shadow Realm. They return to the 4th floor where the mage is confused because she thought her last attack worked, before walking away while promising that she will win the next time they fight. Sally reveals that she got sloppy in her time from the game and had to rely on a skill that nullifies 1 attack per day to survive, then decides to get strong enough that only Maple can hope to defeat her. We go over to the samurai and find her finishing up a quest when the sword of Kusanagi appears before the swordswoman and they begin to fight. Our samurai starts to get overwhelmed by the katana and decides to do an all-or-nothing slash against her opponent. However, she takes heavy damage from the exchange, but the ghost blade was defeated in the end. Our samurai goes to the forest to test out her new weapon. She activates her Bankai to get the clear heart clothing and rushes forward to divide the monster by 2 before calling down even more swords to penetrate deep inside its body to bring this fight to an end. But our swordsman realizes that the skill also turns her into a prison sentence after she uses it. In the night, we find the Walking Calamity looking for her next victim. She sees the leader of the Flame Guild and decides to stalk her under the cover of darkness, where she realizes that the guild master changed her appearance to enter a secret area. Maple decides to join her prey inside the building and finds the leader of the Flame Guild playing with living plushies. Upon seeing our MC, she begins freaking out because Maple is the enemy of all innocent creatures in this world. However, these ones are allowed to survive since she can't farm them for XP. Maple questions why she had to wear a disguise to enter this place, so she explains that as the leader of a guild, going into a room to edge with fluffy animals would make her look weak, and our demon decides to keep this secret safe. They exit the fun house when they're suddenly confronted by the Flame Guild, who questions where their leader has been, and she explains that the 2 guild masters have been exchanging information. Then the red-haired freak leaves Maple to go plan with her teammates. The next day everyone is gathered on the new level to listen as the announcer notifies them about the treasure hunting event that's about to begin. Maple gets teleported into a jungle and sees many wildlife enjoying their peaceful existence, so she sets out to correct this by raining down destruction on the poor creatures. The rank 1 hears something in the distance and sees Maple appear before him in her true form, but since it's a treasure hunting event, the 2 strongest players on the server decide to work together. The giant demon starts walking through the forest while giving everything she sees a one-way ticket to heaven. They notice that some of the animals have escaped to the sky, so the rank 1 goes after them to show the wildlife that there is nowhere for them to hide from complete annihilation. While participating in a mass genocide, Maple accidentally uses her longest appendage to hit a tree that squirts out a golden shower of sticky fluids all over her body. The rank 1 decides to end this fight by creating fireworks to slaughter the remaining animals, but their mother comes down for revenge, so he decides to reunite the queen with her children. 2 days later, we find the duo riding on the Great God King Syrup, who lands near the rank 1's guild, and he leaves with them since the timer is almost over. After the event, Maple hosts a party with all the friends she has made while playing the game, and they decide to open the treasure they got from the mission together. Everyone is changed into a Christmas-themed outfit that seems to be randomized, but Maple is upset because she likes destroying innocent creatures and not cosplaying as them. A few days later, we find our guild taking on the final boss of level 4. Sally charges at the monster and takes off one of its legs while the mage gives it a shocking surprise, but the fox counterattacks with Will-O-Wisp. Seeing no other option, the samurai changes into her fan service form and charges at the boss so she can use long rods to penetrate deep into the monster's body, which gives the twins time to get close enough to smash the demon into the underworld. Our guild realizes that the samurai becomes a prison charge every time she uses the sword and reveals that Maple couldn't be there because she was too sick to play. Later on, Maple goes to face the level 4 boss alone, but she can't seem to find where it's located, so the demon randomly decides to copy the movements of the statues and gets teleported into a hidden area. And Oni congratulates Maple for finding him and activates Mastered Ultra Instincts to fight her, so she enters her mech form and launches a giant laser beam that gets easily blocked. She calls upon the Great Syrup to use Solar Beam to blast him, but the Oni jumps into the air, so the demon follows after her prey and they clash in the sky with the monster being pushed back. The Oni summons his weapon as Maple mounts the God King. She tells him to use Vine Whip, but the boss easily breaks through and blows her off the Great Syrup. Maple realizes that nothing she does has even managed to make a scratch on the boss, but she uses her talent for unaliving everything that moves to come up with a plan. Maple sends away the God King, then decides to unleash the sun upon everything that exists around her to bring this fight to an end. The demon walks over to make sure her prey was smoked, but he gets up to praise her for beating him. They go inside his home to have a meal where the demon gains the Pandemonium skill and realizes that the Oni was not the boss to level 5. Back on level 4, the rank 1 guild finds Maple sitting alone and explains that they're helping their new members to get to the 5th floor, so they decide to work together. They go to face the boss and Maple activates Loving Sacrifice to direct all the damage the party takes to herself. The new members tries to take on the fox, but they deal no damage to the shiny Nine Tails and runs for their lives instead. Our demon decides to use her new skill and activates Pandemonium to arise an army of demons that goes over to gangbang the poor fox until it returns to the Shadow Realm. Then Maple thanks them for all their help and leaves them behind to go up to the new level. Inside the cloudy land of floor 5, the twins suddenly appear in front of their guild master. She asks them why they respawned out of nowhere, and the twins admit that they lost a fight to a powerful monster. The duo invites Maple to participate in her favorite activity. She bleaches her hair to buff the team's defense as their opponent rises from its chair and begins launching lightning at them. The twins begin bunny hopping toward the boss, so it tries to pull a Moses on them, but they jump right in time to land a lethal blow to bring this fight to an end. Both the twins gain lightning abilities while Maple gains a new item. She tries it out immediately and explains that whoever sits on the throne gets their defense buffed along with continuous healing, while also giving the user the power to seal someone's abilities. They get a notification that level 6 is about to be released and go off to spend the rest of their time enjoying everything this stage has to offer, which included Maple using her skill to torture random innocent creatures. Our guild decides to take on the final boss and allows the twins to smash it as many times as they can until the poor bastard gives up on living. They go up to level 6 and finds that it is horror-themed, which makes Sally begin to freak out. The assassin uses a blindfold to travel through the stage, but admits that the only reason she's still on this level is because there are items that would be very good for her build, and Maple decides to go along to help find them. They ride on the Great God King syrup while Sally is having a mental breakdown about everything she sees. Our duo arrives at the haunted mansion and the assassin is scared to go anywhere near it, so Maple transforms into a mech and shows that she's the scariest thing alive in this world. They begin to explore all the rooms inside the house until Sally starts getting a hand job from the Wall of Freaks, but Maple sends the kinky ghost back to the underworld. A magic circle suddenly appears and transports Sally away from Maple, but the erotic arms also followed her, so she begins running like a track star. Because if the hands catch her, this show will no longer be PG-13. Maple tries her best to look for her friend, but Sally is hiding away in the closet so the ghost can't kidnap her. She decides to face her fears and sees an army of monsters gathered to start the party, but the greater demon finds her just in time, then uses her throne of light to keep Sally safe from the undead Riz Lords. The monsters begin going away because they found some new victims to torment, so our assassin channels the Speed Force to run away from the haunted mansion, where she finds that a new skill has been unlocked to double the effects of her items. The next day, Maple returns to the House of Horrors to get the items for Sally. She follows the twin ghosts into a room and falls into a hole with a lot of sticky fluids at the bottom, but our monster uses her telekinesis skill to escape the trap and begins controlling everything around her to capture the undead twins in a cage of slime. Maple confronts the ghosts, but they choose to return to the underworld rather than dealing with the demon in human form. At the guild house, we find Sally coming inside to meet Maple, where her friend hands over the items that they were looking for inside the mansion, but she quickly returns to give back the necklace because it's not meant for her, and after Maple gives it a try, she understands why. Later on, the game announces that a new event is about to begin. They explain that this will be a monster hunting quest where the players are awarded medals based on the difficulty of the monsters slain. Sally and Maple decide to team up like old times, while the rest of the guild will work together to complete the mission. Our duo is transported outside the Tower of God and opens the door to find a generic dungeon inside. Maple bleaches her hair and puts them inside a cloud of wool so they can travel the floor safely without activating any traps. However, when some innocent creatures cross her path, she mercilessly sends them to animal heaven. They enter the boss room and immediately deactivates the cloud as the boss rises from under the earth. Maple takes them into the sky, but the dragon uses its bad breath to force them back to the ground. Sally realizes that its mouth might be a weak spot, so Maple uses extreme speed to deep throat the dragon and bust a full serving of pain inside until she reaches its climax. They go up to the second floor, which seems to be a library. The cutscene is triggered, so they suit up to fight, and when the boss appears, Maple goes in to end its subscription to life, but it bondages her instead to steal most of the skills that she had unlocked. Sally begins running away with Maple and summons some ice pillars so they can hide from the laser beams. The assassin leaves the tank behind to take on the boss, but it summons minions to fight, so Maple uses taunt to draw their attention to herself. Sally uses airwalk to get close to the monsters, but it activates loving sacrifice, which causes her to start attacking the minions because all their damage is now transferred to the boss. She uses the ice pillars as shields to get within range to attack the grimoire's life points directly, which forces it into its second phase. Maple continues to redirect the attack towards herself, but one of the minions goes over to show that it has the best head game on this floor. So Sally begins turning up the heat on every book that she can find until the boss is transformed into ashes, which brings this hard-fought battle to an end. Maple notices that all her skills have been returned and they continue their journey up to the 3rd floor of the tower. They hear something in the distance and see a golem awakening from the pool of magma, but Sally uses her ice pillars to hold it in place, then Spider-Mans her way over to it so she can launch all her water-based spells at the boss, but she does no damage against this monster. Maple summoned the Great Syrup to use Solar Beam on the boss, but it enters phase 2 and begins freezing the entire battlefield. So the demon is forced to assume her true form to duel the golem, and after giving it a mind-blowing experience, they officially cleared this floor. They ascend to the 4th floor and begin exploring their new environment. Maple sees a giant turtle swimming free through the ocean, and the cruel demon enslaves the poor creature to a life of servitude until they decide it's time to move on to the next floor. Then she makes the turtle feel unimaginable pain before it can escape to the afterlife. We go over to our guildmates and find them fighting against an army of undead warriors on floor 5, when a giant hand suddenly penetrates the ground as the Lich King arrives in the combat zone. The tank blocks its attack while the crafter gives it a shocking surprise, leaving the twins to finish it off. They start wondering how Sally is handling this level, so we head over to see Maple in her true form testing if the Lich King has a foot fetish, and after the fighting is done it's shown that the demon's head game is unmatched, but luckily for Sally she chose to spit rather than swallow. The Rank 1's guild arrives on floor 6 as the Dark Magician is summoned to the field along with his minions. The mage begins by buffing her teammates and they use their newfound strength to slay all the summons, while the tank knocks the boss into the air. Then the mage transfers all the buffs to Faker, who goes up to one-shot the boss and successfully clears this level. On floor 7 we find the Flame Guild climbing down a mountain filled with traps. They go inside a cave where the boss tries to penetrate them with spikes, but their support comes in clutch to heal their damage. The guild master starts burning the monster alive before going up into the air to get a dramatic finish. Over to the 8th floor we find our guild struggling against the boss, who uses its tongue of happiness to make the girls' knees weak. Then we head up on floor 9 where our duo is struggling to climb some disappearing platforms until the boss breaks the heavens to enter the level. Maple transforms into a mech and begins flying towards the floating cube, but she gets blown off on impact, forcing Sally to use the Spider-Man skill to save her life. The assassin begins charging at the boss and uses air slash to score a direct hit, but it casts full counter to reflect any attacks that it comes in contact with. Sally has no idea how to beat this monster, but Maple always has a way to slay any life form and begins drilling into the creature, so she can break through its defenses to penetrate straight through its no-no square to bring this battle to an end. They go up to the 10th floor and come face to face with the last boss. The Hollow Knight comes at them and easily knocks Maple into a wall while almost ending Sally, but the tank uses cover to block a very lethal blow, giving the assassin time to land a hit. Maple enters mech mode to turn the knight into fireworks, but it flash steps behind her, then begins chopping away the suit until it is completely destroyed. However, Sally comes in clutch to save her life again, and the two of them decides that they have to go all out to win this battle. The assassin goes on the attack against the Knight of Crucible while the tank goes on defense. Sally begins using all her skills to restrict its movements, but it breaks out and lands a critical blow against a Mirage, which leaves an opening for an attack. The assassin uses double team that are instantly wiped out in one blow, but this gives her room to land another hit. Icarus enters his second phase and begins setting the battlefield on fire. Sally goes to distract the knight, while Maple comes in to freeze their enemy so they can launch all their skills against it. The Knight of Thorns enters a third phase, which forces Maple to assume her true form to withstand a max-powered fire spin. The tank is on low HP, so this will be their final try of victory. Sally runs towards our opponent, but the knight targets Maple first. She uses Shield Bash to knock it away, while Sally comes from above to land as much attacks as possible. The Hollow Knight enters a fourth phase to push her allies away and begins summoning Swords of Light that he throws at our duo. Maple brings forth the Great Syrup to block the raid boss attack to give Sally a chance to get in close and lands a strike while Maple penetrates it from behind. The knight returns his swords to the field and begins focusing on Sally, but Maple uses cover to block a critical blow from the boss. Then she freezes the knight once again while charging up the self-delete spell, while Sally begins making a cage around them so she doesn't get caught when the demon unleashes the sun. Maple is shocked that Icarus somehow survived her attack and has to be saved from a trip to heaven once more, but Sally takes the chance to land one last attack against the boss to finish this fight once and for all. The two players celebrate their victory in conquering the tower. They go back to the guild house and the rest of their teammates join them after somehow defeating all the bosses in the event as well. Our party ascends to level 7 and finds a beautiful landscape filled with many amazing animals running around. The announcer tells them that some of the creatures in the forest are actually tameable, so they can either beat them into submission or find them through a quest, but each player can only have one Pokemon at a time. Maple and Sally decides that they will help their teammates tame pets, and the group begins looking for Pokemon that would best suit them. Our party rides on the Great Maple through the jungle until two Teddiursa come in front of them before running back to the forest. They begin chasing after them but quickly realizes that putting all their stat points into one attribute was not the smartest idea. Our party goes back to the guild house and gains the furry item set to increase their speed along with the last of the speed potion in their storage. So everyone decides that Maple will get more materials for potions while the twins go to capture their Pokemon. They return to the forest and begin to systematically slaughter any animals that are unfortunate enough to cross their path until the little bears are forced to reveal themselves. The twins drink some Red Bull for a quick speed boost and chase after the wild Pokemons, but once our furries catch up they find the Teddiursas playing house with Groot. The bunny girls try to attack the Trevenant, however it uses the Pokemons as shields before bondaging our hammer-wielding duo. They manage to break free of his grip and start running around in circles to confuse the Whomping Willow, then ends the fight with a final smash to send the monster to tree heaven. Then they make the two baby bears their workers without pay for all of eternity. We go over to Maple, who rides on the Great God King Syrup and sees innocent animals swimming by her, but she can't hunt them yet because she's on a mission. The demon arrives on a beach and starts collecting all the material that the crafter needs to make potions. When Maple is suddenly bondaged and gets dragged into the ocean to be judged for her war crimes, but she briefly escapes by revealing her true form before the tentacles continues exploring her body while pulling the demon to hell. Maple awakens in a mysterious cave and immediately begins getting attacked by the tentacles once again, which pulls her in to show off its underwater head game. Then the monster proves that you can both swallow and spit as it finally comes up to do battle with our tank. Maple tries to defend herself, but once again the octopus tells her to get over here so she can get the deep throat treatment. Inside the Dynamax Tentacruel, Maple activates mech form to trigger the monster's gag reflex and gets evicted from its body, but it holds her underwater. The demon decides to return the favor by eating the poor bastard alive, however it begins struggling to survive. Maple decides to paralyze the creature of the ocean before continuing to turn it into a full-course meal until the takoyaki gives up on living in a life filled with suffering. Then Maple realizes that she gained a new skill for all her struggles. Back on floor 4 we find the samurai going over to a frog NPC where she gains a new quest from him to gain a legendary pet. The swordswoman travels to the west where she is confronted by an army of gummy bears and decides to summon her persona to the battlefield, before traveling through all the levels while defeating hordes of monsters that keeps getting stronger with each floor until our samurai faces off against the white snake sage. She tries her best to defeat the final boss, but it paralyzes her to get a free snack. The swordswoman dodges while landing a devastating counterattack and soon realizes that she cannot defeat this boss no matter how hard she tries, then makes a plan to go around it instead. Our samurai run for the hidden entrance with the snake following close behind her, but before it catches up she introduces it to fireworks and successfully cosplay as a skipping stone to enter the next area. Our samurai awakens on the final quest and gets up to go over to the altar where she sees a shiny Ekans sleeping, then forms a contract with it to become her starter Pokemon. Everyone goes back to the guild house and begins sharing the information they found out about this level. the crafter gives the bears matching drip with the twins. As Maple arrives home showing off the ultimate fap arm in existence, Sally following close behind, noticing that the demon has become even more powerful. Our guildmates begin discussing what monsters the rest of them will tame, and they decide to head out to find one before the next event is announced. Our mage wanders around town looking for anything that stands out as a secret mission until he sees a brand new NPC walking through the crowd and decides to follow him home. The redhead commits breaking and entering, then immediately notices that the bookshelf is strange as a slime reveals itself before running away. Our mage tracks the creature to a cave far into the wilderness. He enters to find a room filled with majestic crystals, but one of his reflections is not inverted, so he prepares to fight while the ditto transforms into our caster. The greatest mirror match in history begins with the two magic knights constantly using their grimoires to counter each other until our sorcerer catches him in a combo to bring the battle to an end. Then he claims the Pokemon as his own by forming a contract with it. The crafter arrives in the town and looks at the missions to gain a Digimon, where she sees a spirit animal that catches her eyes. She goes to a blacksmith to accept the quest, so he gives her a list of legendary items to craft with 100% efficiency. Our weapon maker wanders through town until she encounters Maple and the leader of the Flame Guild about to go out to slaughter innocent animals for experience, so they decide to help her collect materials along the way. The guildmaster summons a Ho-Oh in the town and starts flying our party towards the first area on the mission list. They go inside a cave where the crafter begins gathering the material, but a group of innocent monsters gets too curious, so the two women commences a great massacre upon every living thing around them until they learn to stay away. The crafter comes over to give the psychopaths potions to both heal and buff them at the same time, then they head deeper inside the volcano. Drago rolls out of a pool of lava to stand against our party. Maple activates Super Scion alongside her mech to charge at the monster, so she wraps her long slimy appendages around its face to prove that her grip game is unmatched. The crafter buffs the guildmaster's magic power and she jumps on Ho-Oh to join the fight. They start flying around the boss while hitting it with as many fireballs as possible until it finally decides to meet Dragon Jesus. The crafter has collected all the material from this area, so they fly off to find the rest of the items on the list. Hours later, our blacksmith successfully completes her quest and is taken to the spirit world by the NPC. She stands on an altar as a shiny Rotoms appears before her, so our weapon maker forms a contract with it. We go over to the tank and find him on a quest to get his Pokemon. He sees a cave below and goes inside the mountain's butthole where the undead begins to swarm him, however they are all easily defeated. The tank realizes that he can never catch up to Maple if he plays normally, so he must become something else to be useful. Our guild mate enters the boss room and sees an army of monsters waiting for him, so he charges at them while using life steal to stay alive. The drain tank makes it to the ship and faces off against the boss. They begin fighting, but our ally comes out on top, and for all his efforts the tank gains a chest filled with gold along with an armored Darkrai as his Pokemon. At the guild house, our teammates show off all the new pets they managed to subjugate along with the special effects they provide. The next day, Maple and Sally decide to take the day to hang out together, when the mage enters the room to ask Sally for another duel while showing off that she now has a Pokemon, and of course Sally always stands on business. They go outside to enter the fighting arena, then the battle begins with the mage trying to summon her pet, but the assassin activates the Speed Force and Shadow Clone Jutsu at the same time, before knocking up her rival into the air to use Omni Slash to send the defenseless woman in the direction of the Shadow Realm, and bringing this battle to an end. The mage complains that she didn't get to show off her Pokemon and decides to let them see it. Sally starts preparing herself for the undead Riz, however it turns out to be just an overweight Torchic instead, and she asks the assassin for a rematch with both of them using their pets this time, but the mage gets a message from her guild leader to hide all new abilities until after the event, so she leaves for now. Our duo decides to explore level 7 together, and the two women begin traveling throughout the world while having fun viewing all the beautiful sceneries and tormenting innocent animals along with squirting liquids all over each other. Sally loses Maple for a moment and finds that she has condemned a herd of sheep to a life of servitude before forcing the poor animals to carry them around until they get tired enough to stop for water. Our duo comes out of the ball of cloud and the demon goes over to feast upon the sheep, but sensing that this monster will never let them live in peace, the herd decides to run while they still can to regain their freedom. Sally does a Spider-Man to pull Maple out of the lake before noticing that something inside the water is glowing, and the great syrup comes out to go into the pond where he returns with a white crystal. Our team gains a hidden quest to find 3 gems to unlock a door, and 100 IQ. Sally realizes that it was following the animals that triggered this mission, so they decide to look for more creatures that travel in groups to track. This leads the 2 women to a beach where Sally dives underwater to swim after a school of fish that goes into a cave covered in glowing rocks with a giant tablet in the center, which contains a map with the location of the other gems. They go to the tree fort where a giant chicken awakens to fight against our teammates. The boss takes to the sky, but the great syrup uses Vine Whip to restrain the monster while Sally goes up to unleash a devastating dagger rush alongside a solar beam from the God King. Maple takes the time to activate her strongest skills and charges at the boss to give the poor creature such a brutal combo that it can only be described as animal abuse before applying Hydra for maximum overkill. Sally sees a crystal in the distance and our team successfully collects 2 out of 3 keys. They travel to the Archdragon's Peak where the wind threatens to blow them off. The boss reveals himself in the center of a cyclone and uses splintered storm shards to take Maple out of the fight, but Sally continues to head towards the Reggie Rock and lands the first blow on it. The monster uses Rock Wrecker on the assassin, however it's suddenly cut in half because Maple is now using her laser cannon as a lightsaber to fight the boss. Sally takes this moment to close the distance on her opponent to get into range and dodges a lethal blow so she can do a team ultimate with Maple to bring this fight to an end. They get the last crystal needed to complete the quest and goes to a ruin in the forest where the gems opens a portal that transports them into a hidden area within the game. Sally's pet runs off, so they follow it throughout their new locations while seeing many interesting creatures that have never been encountered until our party arrives at a cave with a radioactive pool deep within. They place their pets into the water, which causes them to evolve into a more powerful form. Our team returns to the guild house to show them what happened to the pets, and Maple wonders if everyone could all evolve their Pokemon for the upcoming event, but our guildmates explain that they can't do that yet because their pet's level isn't high enough to trigger the hidden mission. The next day our guild sits at the table while the announcer explains that this event will be divided into 2 parts, with round 1 being a survival match where everyone will get points based on the amount of monsters they smoke, but only the person who last hits the monster will be awarded the points, so working together would be counterproductive. Our teammates gets transported to different locations and Maple summons the doggies to participate in her favorite activity. Her first victim appears, so she gives it a shocking surprise before going over to feed the monster to her shield. Then our demon begins a great slaughter upon any creature unfortunate enough to cross her path until they become wise enough to flee from her on sight, since she has no speed stats to chase them down with. Maple walks around the forest, then sees a plant station 6 on the ground and wisely decides to poke the mysterious mushroom. It begins releasing spores that draw all the monsters in the area to their location, and Maple calls upon Super Great God King Syrup to turn the battlefield into quicksand so she can have an easier time sending the defenseless animals to the afterlife. One of the twins is traveling through the forest when she encounters people from another group, so our guild member sends her Teddy Ursa to show them the light before making it unleash Fury Swipe to maul the poor bastard, while the rest of them wisely makes a tactical retreat. The other twin meets up with her sister, who shows that Maple is on the map being overwhelmed by an army of monsters, so they decide to go and help her out. Our damage dealers arrive at the forest but realize that Maple is enjoying making all these innocent creatures into hashtags, then decides to leave her alone. However, after a few hours of repeated genocide, Maple lets down her guard and gets deep-throated by a sneaky monster. We go over to the crafter and find her using her pet to buff all the traps before placing them all over the woodland. Then she sets off her boomers to give everyone present inside the jungle their own personal fireworks show. The tank faces off against 2 golems and equips his Digimon to use a Fire Fist to one-shot the giant rock monsters before giving the remaining animals an express ticket to the Shadow Realm. We head over to our mage to see him facing off against 2 members of the Rank 1 guild. He puts up a wall to block their vision, but they instantly turn it into sand as the bruiser uses Earthquake, which forces our mage to activate shadow clones to survive. The assassin uses his divine dog to attack all the copies at once while he channels the Speed Force to give the mage a lethal backshot to end the fight. The Rank 1 guild continues their hunt while our mage hides behind a rock and thanks his pet for taking his place after he placed the rock wall. We enter a mysterious forest surrounded by mists and see a man get paralyzed before he's sliced to bits by our samurai. She then travels through the jungle while putting everything she needs on a t-shirt regardless if they're a human or a monster. Sally hides behind a rock while spying on 2 of the most powerful guild masters on the server. They start a power beam struggle with them being evenly matched before calming upon their Pokemon to do battle alongside them. The Flame Empress decides to go all out and calls upon her Ho-Oh to activate Baryon mode, then uses a fireball on Faker to nuke the entire combat zone. The Rank 1 escape with little damage and gets ready to continue their fight when Maple suddenly appears from the forest after turning the monster that ate her into a worker without pay, so the 2 guild leaders decides to finish their fight on a later date. After the event, our teammates celebrate because all of them did well enough to be in the top ranks of the main event. The announcer tells them that in part 2 the people that are on the highest difficulty level will gain 5 medals for surviving while getting 1 medal for each monster slain. But unlike the previous event, everybody who participates in taking down a boss will gain a medal, so there is no point in fighting among each other, and it's revealed that in the night powerful waves will begin to spawn to annihilate anyone they find. Our guildmates get teleported to a vast wasteland and are immediately confronted by giant monsters. Maple bleaches her hair and calls upon Super Syrup to use Solar Beam on them while the samurai summons her snake, who strangles the fugly bastard to take it down. Then the tank lands a lethal blow followed by the twins' hammer barrage to finish them off. Everyone begins to celebrate winning their first fight while the mage reveals that he has the best pet any man could ask for, leaving the women shocked by the implications, but luckily the transformation doesn't last long enough for any nefarious deeds to be done. They realize that those monsters didn't drop any medals and decides to split up their group into 2 parties to raid the boss dungeons more efficiently. Maple's party rides on the giant bears until they reach a location that is covered in quicksand, but no obstacle can stand in the way of Super Great God King Syrup. Our team gets teleported deep inside the island where they are met by an unwanted jump scare. However, our guild wants all the smoke. The twins begin smashing the creature from the underworld until it becomes a puddle on the ground, but Maple begins taking damage because our hammer-wielding duo is being attacked by the mud. Sally comes in clutch to free them, then they return to Super Great Syrup. Our team realizes that the more they fight the more the muck will multiply, but the twins reveals that the crafter made them new weapons before beginning to rain down hell on the poor bastard until it's banished to the underworld from whence it came, which also earns our team their very first medal. Team 2 rides on the giant white glizzy and heads far into the forest until they come upon a tree that transports them into the boss room. Our party is suddenly attacked from the shadows, forcing our mage to place a shield, but none of them can find the monsters because it's hiding. The crafter begins setting up traps all over the map and activates them to turn the room into a fiery hellscape. Then our mage uses a spell to create a sun in the sky to reveal the boss's location. At the same time, the samurai and tank use their team ultimate to bring this battle to an end to achieve their second medal. Our guild meets up back together at a dungeon that they hope to turn into their new base before nightfall when all the powerful monsters come out to play. Maple thinks about the best ways to make any monster that enters suffer and decides to cover everything in poison before placing the crafter's trap for maximum overkill. She heads back to see the twins finishing up placing boomers, and they return to the crafter to find her building the best base that can possibly be made in this game. The monsters begin to attack our base and got to take a few steps before being blown into non-existence by an endless discharge of nukes while our guildmates are having fun playing a game of cards. In the morning, our party decides to exit their base to hunt more bosses, but finds that their map is disabled along with all their other communications, as a teleportation circle appears to scatter them across the map. We find Maple alone on the beach wondering where everyone could be, so she decides to do the very reasonable thing and flies high into the air with her mech form with some assistance from Super Great Syrup before kamikazing herself to create fireworks that can be seen by everyone. Our demon falls from the skies until she is caught by the leader of the Flame Guild, who wonders how the Fork Maple came up with that idea. She reveals that the storm has been closing in on the map and deletes any players unfortunate enough to come in contact with it. But before leaving, the guild master decides to give Maple a fantasy air tag just in case the explosions in the sky isn't an adequate hint to her location. We go over to the tank and find him with the healer surrounded by a huge horde of monsters. They try their best to fight as hard as possible, but slowly the flying abominations begin to overwhelm them until a sun falls from the sky to eliminate their opponent. As the Flame Guild leader arrives on the battlefield, she tells him that Maple is busy trying to delete herself and offers to team up with him to find their other guildmates. Inside a boss dungeon, the Trapper and Crafter work together so they can survive being on their own. They enter the final room and start fighting against Azir, who uses a rise to summon sand soldiers, which easily get blown into oblivion. The Trapper uses Flying Thunder God to swap places with his kunai, and they begin unleashing hell upon the boss until it ascends to the gates of heaven. Our duo successfully clears the dungeon, then encounters the Flame Guild leader waiting outside and shows off that they earned a medal for their troubles. The samurai and swordsman are encircled by an endless swarm of average proportioned glizzes, but the stylish Pidgeotto uses gusts to blow all of them off in one go until the rare 6-incher exposes itself and gets a size reduction by our katana-loving teammate to bring this battle to an end. They see the Ho-Oh flying in the distance, and the swordsman surely earns 16 years in prison while attempting to get their attention. We find Sally slaying all the monsters foolish enough to cross her path until a fireball comes in to defeat her opponent. The mage reveals herself and begins helping our assassin to finish off all the remaining creatures that are alive around them. She tells Sally that they should work together because with her detection skill, finding their teammates will be super easy, barely even an inconvenience. The rest of our guild members struggle to hold off an army of flying imps to protect the twins, since without Maple one attack can end them. Sally and her rival come in from the forest and they see that all the monsters are suddenly defeated as the rank 1 and his assassin joins them as well. The mage reveals that their base have been swallowed by the storm, and 100 IQ Sally sees an opportunity, then comes up with a plan. She takes everyone to Maple to ask her if they can invite the guilds to use their base so all of them can work together to slaughter any creature that comes too close to them, and of course our guild leader loves this idea. Everyone starts to travel to the dungeon, then they cooperate with all their skills to make it the most fortified stronghold the server has ever seen. All the preparations have been made just as night begins to fall. The monster starts entering their base, but the traps have little effect on them, so two of the guild masters decides to go outside to take them on. They both enter their awakening forms and launch a team ultimate to fork everything that exists in that direction, but the destructive duo also wiped out all the traps that were placed as well. Our party decides that it wouldn't be wise to spend all day fixing everything that was destroyed, but instead they will divide themselves into 4 groups who will go out to defeat bosses while the fodders can stay behind to protect the base. The twins party heads off to clear one of the dungeons while wiping out any monster that chooses to enter their path until they arrive at the location and gets teleported deep within the lake. The Trapper makes the entire party undetectable, then they find an ocean of vicious monsters separating them from their goal, but the assassin comes in clutch by using Chimera Shadow Gardens to bypass all the creatures without needing to fight them. Our party continues to the boss room and goes inside to find a very special Whiskash. The assassin goes in along with his divine dogs to use air slash to get the unholy creature's attention, while the twins try to give the poor bastard all the chromosomes that it didn't receive at birth, until the boss finally falls to the ground and gets smashed by our guildmates. The atypical Whiskash gets up from its beating to use Thunderbolt on the twins, but the Trapper quickly creates a massive fortress to defend his teammates from harm. the assassin channels the Speed Force as he hides in his shadow to get close enough to land a devastating blow on the boss to end this hard-fought battle, and they all receive a medal for completing this quest. The Rank 1's party flies through the sky until they see a floating landmass. Our party lands on the island and discovers a mansion hidden within the forest, so they open the door and are immediately teleported to the boss room. Everyone enters the final area and is confronted by a boss that endlessly summons monsters to fight them. Our magic knight begins the battle by launching spells at the boss, but it duplicates itself to launch a massive attack, forcing him to go on the defensive. The healer starts buffing her teammates, then the Rank 1 goes on his Lugia, leaving the rest of his party to keep the boss distracted so he can charge his ultimate attack to wipe out all the monsters in one move, and they gain a medal for completing their task. We find our samurai's team walking through a sandstorm until they encounter a labyrinth made of stone. Everyone walks through the dungeon and finds another desert waiting at the end with a lot of unwanted surprises hiding inside, so all of our teammates use their most powerful attacks to take down everything that breathes around them, but the bosses enter phase 2 and prepare to continue the fight. The tank equips his Pokemon to his shield and uses taunt on both of the monsters, while the rest of our party uses their team ultimate to take down one of the bosses, with the other joining it in the afterlife shortly after, earning them a medal for winning this fight. We go over to Maple's group to find her committing a great genocide on all the creatures she can find, but Sally sees a portal spawning the creatures, so Maple decides that they'll fly into it. Our party grabs onto Maple while assuming the good girl position, then Sally wraps them on tight before riding shotgun, so when Maple launches her mech she doesn't get a free facelift as they enter the void in space. She disables her robot and our party sees an egg in the distance that hatches as the boss arrives on the battlefield. The monster starts approaching them, so the mage puts up as many barriers as she can manage, but it still breaks through with one hit, forcing them to dodge its follow-up attack. Maple assumes her true form to duel the boss while her teammates attack it from range to deal catastrophic blows to its life points. Our demon manages to disarm the boss, but it counters with a lethal laser beam which Maple repays by burning the poor bastard alive. However, it isn't enough and she reverts to her human form before the boss tests if she has a foot fetish. Maple explodes to free herself, then it's revealed that she remains undamaged, as Super Great Syrup comes out to fight with her while the mage buffs the entire party. Sally charges at the monster and lands a devastating backshot on it, leaving both the guild master and Maple to use their 3-bar abilities to unleash the sun on the boss to end its subscription to life. Our base is surrounded by many monsters and the defenders inside decides that they must do their part to support their newfound alliance. Our noble party ventures outside to slay their foe but gets swiftly reminded that they're not main characters. Everyone returns to the base to share all the information that they were able to find out. Nighttime falls and a horde of the strongest bosses begins to appear around the world, and our teammates realize that their base is not strong enough to handle these monsters, so our party decides that they must fight them off in order to head outside to gain more flexibility in their movements. Everyone makes it to the entrance safely, then takes to the skies to avoid losing any of their team members. They decide to make a mountaintop their new base and consider it their last stand to survive against the final wave of night monsters. Our party begins working together to fortify the area with their abilities, when beams of light begin erupting from the ground as the ultimate boss is conjured into this world. Everyone realizes that they're pretty much forked, but Cthulhu chooses to make this clear by using planetary devastation on the world, but Maple comes in clutch to block the meteors and saves everyone from a game over. Our alliance makes a plan to complete this quest and splits up into groups to deal with the mobs of monsters, while Maple's guild will try to keep Hentai Face busy. They confront the final boss riding Super Great God King Syrup, then lands on the ground to hide from the abomination. Maple transforms into her true form and Sally alongside our mage uses multi-shadow clone jutsu to duplicate the demon, then she rushes in the direction of Cthulhu to jump on the monster so they can do as much damage as possible. The twins start to smash Hentai Face with their bears, but the boss feels the pain and tries to laser them. However, the tank is on point to block all of its attacks. Cthulhu is brought to its knees as the rest of our party enters the fight to attack its life points directly to slowly deliver it to the afterlife. The boss enters phase 2 and starts firing lasers from all the holes in his body, which forces Maple to cosplay as a human. Then it uses Draco Meteor on our party, but the mage comes in clutch to save them from certain demise. Cthulhu begins to take to the skies and runs away from our guild members to heal. However, Maple allows no creature to escape her grasp, so she fires the mech cannon at the boss's wings to introduce the poor bastard to the floor. Cthulhu charges a hyper beam at our duo, which Maple manages to block, but at the cost of her mech form. The boss uses Mateo to bring down the sky on them, and luckily the other guild leaders saved our party just in time. Every member of our alliance starts using their strongest skills to gangbang the monster with anything they can think of to send it to the Shadow Realm, but even after taking all this damage, Cthulhu somehow still remains standing. The 3 guild masters face off against the boss, and Maple goes up into the sky before jumping off Super Great Syrup, who uses a solar beam to give her a boost. Then she deeps throat the boss so hard that it ends in a backshot, which finally defeats Hentai Face to bring this event to an end. Everyone begins celebrating because they survived the quest, and all of them gain medals that can be used to trade for skills. Our duo then takes some time to themselves to travel through all the floors to see all that they have accomplished, while looking forward to the future adventures that is to come in this game.
Like for a cat girl, subscribe for a waifu, and remember to stay swifty.